Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. Anthony Joshua has left no shadow of a doubt where his focus lies, saying Deontay Wilder has his 100% attention and that a very good offer is coming his way.
Yay!
So you might recall, since Anthony Joshua called out Wilder after beating Joseph Parker March 31st, the Bronze Bomber, he's questioned how much the Brit really wants to fight him. How much does he really want to become an undisputed champion? And in part, he's saying that his promoter, Eddie Hearn, his mouthpiece Eddie Hearn, is doing all the talking instead of Joshua. And that's led him to question whether Joshua is actually his own boss, like Deontay Wilder is.
All units, shots fired.
So Joshua, he has now hit back in this verbal war of words in an interview with Sky Sports, saying in relation to Wilder, I want that fight. There's no doubt about that. I've gone through a situation to get that fight. I want to become the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world. I've got my hands on 4 world titles in 21 fights. And he was very vocal about wanting the fight before I was, because my objective was to accumulate every single one of the belts. Now I've done that. Wilder has my 100% attention. I've waited for an offer. So we're about to make another offer to Wilder's team. A very good offer. So that should create a lot of interest. Hopefully that should stop a lot of his talking and whining, and he should step up to the plate and take the deal.
What did he say?
And Joshua, he's also confirmed that there would be a rematch clause for Wilder. And you'd imagine if that's the case, there would be one for himself. So essentially, we are looking at a 2-fight scenario here, a 2-fight deal.
Yay!
And you may recall as well, the WBA, it ordered its mandatory challenger Alexander Povetkin fight Joshua, commence negotiations for a fight, have 30 days to do so, etc.
No, please don't!
But in terms of that, Joshua says, I'm not really interested in Povetkin. I'm interested in Wilder. I want to hold all of the belts because I want to become the undisputed champion. Hopefully the situation can be pushed into 2019. And while we're here, so Joshua, he's also asserted his A-side status by saying, the first one has to be in the UK. I want to be able to call that shot because I've worked extremely hard to put myself in a power position when it comes to the negotiations. So hopefully he'll understand and come to the UK to get this fight on. The same deal we're going to offer Wilder, I would have grabbed that with both hands. I just looked at it as a flip reverse. I'm an astute businessman. Even though I fight, I'm a hustler. I've got a strategy, I'm very smart, and I educate myself. The deal I looked at for Wilder is the same deal I looked at for myself. And I would have been over the moon with a deal like that at that stage, so we'll see how he takes it. Okay, so quite a bit to unpack there, obviously, and there's a couple of significant talking points. And first off, well, actually, before I get to my first point, I'll just make a little sort of observation. Did you notice there was a little bit of a dig there from Anthony Joshua about collecting the belts? Sort of the indication that Wilder hasn't bothered to do that. There's sort of, there was a bit of between the line stuff there. Anyway, so Joshua, his previous silence after the Parker fight, which, about 9 or 10 days or whatever it has been, that was allowing Deontay Wilder to make some traction in the media, score some headlines, some column inches, and somewhat unopposed. And sure, Eddie Hearn was out there reacting and trying to sort of shut it all down, and he's expected to do that. But it really did need Joshua to respond to stem the tide, help change the narrative. And now he has responded. And not only that, he's reiterated a fight with Wilder is his #1 priority. And he's putting the ball back into Wilder's court by saying, well, a very good offer is coming your way. Hopefully it'll stop your talking, your whinging, as Joshua puts it. He's also indicated that Wilder, he's already turned down an offer, perhaps more than one. He's just saying another offer is coming. And when he says a good offer, I think we've got to take that with a little bit of a grain of salt, because his view of a good offer could very well differ to my view or yours, and more importantly, Deontay Wilder's. Hopefully it is a good offer, because the last thing I'm interested in hearing next is low ball offers, blah, 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 and sort of a back and forth like that. Because it is getting to a point where both sides have to be a little bit careful with what they are saying publicly, and airing of dirty linen, etc. Because it will start to look very petty. Remember, we've got millionaires here who are, trying to debate over splits here. And it got very tedious when Parker and Joshua were in their fight negotiations, and they aired it all blow by blow. And do we really want to sort of see, or do we need to hear that? And especially hear that sort of stuff again, because we just went through that just a number of months ago. And we know that Team Wilder, it's already put a stake in the ground at 40% of the pie. But these things, they're like shifting sands though, and I could see them perhaps taking less, especially since a rematch for Wilder does appear to be in the offing. And that's the key difference from the Parker deal. I mean, where no rematch was offered for Parker. So a rematch effectively means getting paid twice, and potentially a bigger split in the second fight if he wins the first one. And I'm sure all of this has been factored into the offer and in the negotiations in general. If I actually had to guess, with a rematch in their pocket, Team Wilder probably get somewhere between 35 and 40%. And I know that there's going to be a section of both fans, so Wilder fans will say that's not enough, and Joshua fans will say that's too much, that's outrageous, and that he shouldn't be getting that. But I think actually between 35 and 40% with a rematch clause, getting paid twice, that's probably about right. 40%, I wouldn't even mind that if it was 40%. This is a bigger fight than the Parker fight. Undisputed is on the line. So it should command more of a split than that Parker fight. And that cut was somewhere between 30 and 35% with no rematch. And if Joshua, he really wants that fight, he will have to pay Deontay Wilder well. It's as simple as that. And I would note that Wilder has been quieter in recent days on social media and in the media. And to me, that tells me stuff is happening behind the scenes. So quiet in this circumstance is not necessarily a bad thing where negotiations are concerned. And I noted a little earlier, Joshua stated that that first fight has to be in the UK. And I'm interested in your thoughts on the location thing, not so much just for this fight, but more on as Joshua's career has been progressing, he's become more and more adamant about fighting in the UK. He's become more wedded to the idea that he doesn't have to fight anywhere else, at least not immediately. He's been saying actually he's pretty happy fighting where he is. So, that sort of differs to a year or two ago he was talking about traveling to America or Africa, fighting around the world. And that's something former Undisputed Champion Lennox Lewis, he's certainly been vocal and encouraging, because his view is that as a world champion, you should fight around the world, not just in one place. And I am starting to wonder if any frustrations are building with Eddie Hearn on this sort of topic, because he clearly wants him to branch out of the UK into other markets. The US is the most likely suspect here. And branching out to the US with a fight or two, that will help Eddie Hearn's fledgling Matchroom USA brand. So, yeah, it's interesting, this whole fighting in the UK thing. What do you make of it? I definitely think at some point he does need to travel, and it should be, while he's still in his prime. If he wants to truly become a massive global star, and arguably he already is quite up there, I think if he wants to become a true global star, he's going to have to fight elsewhere, because that will build his profile. But it's got to be the right circumstances, the right fight, the right deal. Can't just fight somewhere for the sake of it. But I think he will have those opportunities. So I hope he's not too wedded to just the UK, because increasingly it is sounding like he is. Joshua, in his recent statements, he's also managed to square away, and I think quite importantly, his thoughts on the Povetkin mandatory situation, saying he's not interested in that right now. Hopefully it can be put off so the Wilder fight can take place. And this message from Joshua, it's important because it reiterates his desire for that undisputed clash to happen now, not later. And it certainly runs counter to and decimate the view of some fans who've been saying that Joshua doesn't want the fight, that he will hide behind the Povetkin mandatory, and that he's scared of Wilder, etc., etc. I mean, to be honest, I don't think either guy is scared. They just want to cut the right deal for them, because at the end of the day, you know, they've got their family, they've got their lives post-boxing, and these sorts of deals help set them up for life. Not just them, but it could be for generations to come potentially. Also, the statement, it does limit Deontay Wilder's ability to use the Povetkin mandatory against Joshua, because I think that would have been a bit of a weak point. But this Povetkin mandatory situation, it does have to be followed up with some action. So I'd expect that, given that there's now been this clear stare from Joshua, that his promoter Eddie Hearn should be looking to the WBA and sort of trying to get that exemption granted to put the mandatory fight off. And if we're talking a 2-fight deal, well, that will be 2019, as Joshua alluded. And I'm sure the feelers will be out, and he'll, you know, be waiting potentially on a deal with Team Wilder, because then he can put to the WBA, look, we've got this deal in place for an undisputed clash. But then again, perhaps they don't actually need the deal. Maybe it's just the prospect of this undisputed unification that they can put to the WBA and say, look, we want to pursue this. Can we just put this other stuff on hold, see where things go? And given it's their champion's stated desire to get an exemption, that, you know, surely will hold some weight with the WBA. And perhaps it's even enough to get the wheels turning for that exemption. I mean, Anthony Joshua, very popular champion. The WBA just named him its Boxer of the Month. So I would find it hard to see the WBA, the sanctioning body, stripping him off his belt. If anything, because he is so popular, he brings in the sanctioning fees for them. You know, they like to have popular champions. They're going to bend over backwards, you know, to sort of satisfy him. And they already have. We've seen this in 2017. So all in all, though, Joshua, he's managed to cauterize a few areas he was looking a little bit weak on. He needed to speak. He needed to counter some of what Deontay Wilder was saying. He's put the ball firmly back in Deontay Wilder's court. But the action, it needs to follow the words now. We need to get this fight done. Otherwise, if we're sitting here in 3 months talking about this still, it's going to be pretty boring, pretty hollow, and we're going to be asking, well, what's been going on? I'm interested to see what develops next, because it feels like a deal is not a million miles away. If it happens in the next week or two, that would actually be quite quick, but that's kind of what it needs to be. I mean, there is such a sense of excitement from fans and expectation that we want to see this happen, announced, get the ball rolling, and have this mega fight somewhere June, July. It'd be great. What do you make of it all? Drop a comment loud and often. Hit like, hit subscribe, follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.